like you and me, and therefore, once again, we're able to show you your potential by watching somebody else's story. So that one actually was a fiction story. It was made up, but many of the things that I did were women transcending their circumstances. And that's what I wanted to do, and that's in fact why I was resisting doing Bionic Woman in the first place. When you first came to me about it, because I didn't know anything about it, really. I was in acting, but I really didn't watch much of anything on television. I saw very few movies. I'm laughing when people used to tease me about, oh, how could you not know this, or how could you not know that business? I just work here. You know, I like doing it, and I've been doing it since I was very young, but not professionally. And now I step into this, and it just, boom, it just went, as you know, very, very quickly for me, and became very successful, and therefore I had all this choice that I could do these kinds of stories. But for me, I wanted to go in and do stories about social issues. I wanted to do stories about human potential. I wanted to do stories about women. You can transcend these circumstances, but it takes looking at yourself and evolving yourself, and stop pointing the finger out there as to why things aren't good for you. You've got to go inside. You've got to find that power inside and do something with ourselves to move out of it. That may impact the outside, for sure, but it's got to come from within, and it's not, you can't stop blaming and just getting grow. So that's what the kind of stories were that I wanted to do. And when my friend reminded me that the Bionic Woman was something that I could talk to kids about, and I had to take that passion and those ideas that I wanted to talk to, say, to women about through my films, and talk to children that way. And so we tried to make stories that would empower them from the get-go, so we wouldn't have to do so much unlearning.
It was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. The question pertains to the writing of Bionic Woman. How subtle or intentional do you think various morals or themes were incorporated in the story? For example, on the Doomsday episode where they wanted to end nuclear war, I mean, was that an intentional goal of the writers? We had to fight I think Alex was the computer to the death kind of thing?
I'm sorry?
How intentional were the morals or the themes that they put in, like the deeper messages in the episodes?
Oh, very specific about that. Very, very, very much so. Yes. I mean, I don't know how to say it other than it was very specific all the way along, and always looking for something that would make it more than just kind of blind entertainment for children, or for families, really. Because what we realized very early on was that whole families were watching this. It wasn't just the children.
Was it fun?
Parents would use the children as an excuse because they thought, well, it's supposed to be for kids.
Did you have fun the episode where you fought the computer to the death for the nuclear war one, Doomsday?
Yeah, that was tough. It was well, actually, there's a little story. Some of you maybe have heard this before. I haven't told it too often, but in the scene where she's running down, I remember this. I remember it from being on the set, so your point of view is going to be a little different than probably how I remember it. You're looking at it from this direction, but running down the hill, and there were landmines going off.
Right.
There were about, I don't know how many charges set. I don't know how many ended up on screen, but there was at least 20 charges. And they'd all been set. It took a half a day, at least a half a day, for them to set all those charges coming down the hill. And our special effects man got everything ready, and Ken Johnson, who wrote the director, came over and he said, okay, he said, now are all your guys in place? Because we only had the ability in those days to have X number of charges on one lead. And so we had to have one person set off those 5 charges, another person behind that bush to set off those 5 charges. So there was this whole team of people setting off all these charges. And Rita was gonna, my stunt double, of course, was gonna serpentine down, and they were gonna go off just behind her because the point was that Jacob was running just a little bit faster than all those charges catch up with her. And so Ken comes to the, he's like, hey, you ready? Finally, you guys finally ready? He's like, yeah, we gotta get this shot. We have so many hours of dark left, and we've gotta get blah, blah, blah. So he says, oh yeah, I'm ready. And he says, now how are you going to do this? He said, where are your guys? He said, well, there's one behind that tree and that. And he's pointing out where the guys were, and they've all got so many charges, told him what the case was. And he said, do they all have walkies? He said, no. And he said, well, how are you going to let them know to start? And he said, well, they're kind of simultaneously going to go after the next charge. He said, but how are you going to start the whole thing? He said, oh, I just told them to watch for my hanky like this. And everybody just stood there. And poor Joe, sometimes we allowed to swear. We called him Oh Shit Joe. Special effects man, because he occasionally you would hear, oh. And it was like, oh no, if Joe is saying that, you know we're in trouble, right? So you're gonna hit the deck if you hear that. And of course, it's big silence. And then at the last, he just starts saying it, and everybody chimed in and said with him. And so they had to bring it all up. That was one of the things that happened in that particular episode.
Now you mentioned, you know, we've been talking about this, the morals, and definitely made the effort with the Bionic Woman. You did 2 subsequent TV series. You did Jessie, and I remember. I don't remember a lot of it, to be honest with you, other than I do remember as a kid reading the newspaper accounts of your fight with the networks because they wanted Jessie to carry a gun, and you wouldn't back down. And I was impressed with that. And then your following one was Peaceable Kingdom, which I loved. I wish that would come out on DVD. Because you've got, you know, these days they're willing to put out 5, 6 episodes on a set. Why not do, you've got 12 episodes there, why not do Peaceable Kingdom as a DVD?
Regina, put that on the list.
There you go.
Yeah, it was fun, and I think I was kind of sad when they canned it because, you know, they didn't do short orders then. They would make long orders and then cancel them. It was kind of backwards from what they do today. And we just had, okay, the reason I say that is because when they do short orders today, if they feel it's not strong enough, you have, once you run this little season, you have a great deal of time before that time, like in Warehouse, they only do 13. Right. So they've got the whole rest of the year to work on bettering, refining, getting the scripts, honing it. And then they can take it for another short one, which doesn't obligate them for that big massive movie again. And so they can actually work at getting something better. Whereas then it was you've got how many weeks to get this many numbers. And I felt like, well, with Jessie and Peaceable Kingdom, but especially Peaceable Kingdom, because it was such a unique concept.
It was.
And very different than so much of everything else that was on TV. Trying to find just the right elements in the culture of the television at the time. We felt like we were just starting to get that group, that kind of focus groups and critiques that we would hear or whatever, we were finally getting to them, but by that time, we had our obligatory, what was it, about 6 weeks or something. We filmed 12 and it ran.
I don't think they showed all the episodes.
No, they didn't. I don't know how it ran. Maybe 8 weeks or something. And by that time, they weren't getting the numbers they wanted, but the show was definitely turning. And we didn't have a chance to see, nobody got to see those last 4 or 5 episodes where we actually tweaked it and said, I think this is what it's going to be. They took it off to see, so that was sad. But,
at the time you were asked to do Bionic Woman, did you ever imagine that that character would become such an iconic character, and even now for future generations? And And then the second question that I have is, what were 3 of your favorite episodes, and what were your 3 of your least favorite episodes, and why? Bionic Woman.
You think I'm going to talk about episodes I didn't like in front of this group? I do not have to put it on. Well, the first question is no. I felt it could be impactful and nice for kids, and hopefully get some principles across through it. And it was, I was pretty young in the business at that time also. And so for me, it was a stretch to, it was a learning process about myself and my ability to take a story or a script and reconceptualize it and tweak it and either rewrite it myself or work with a writer and have rewrite it with my concepts, with being able to get the ideas that I wanted to get into stories. Because I'm an idea person, I'm a concept kind of person, but I'm not the person who usually can say, pull this and this and this and this together to make it happen. So I work well with writers to infuse it with this idea. If she says blah blah blah, what would they do? So I'd only take it that far in my head. And we should have had a clue that something was going on when the first two-parters were just so responded to by the public that something really powerful was building. Because as you know, I'm sure this group, most of you know, that the first episode was just meant to be a two-parter, and that was it. And public said, you cannot kill her. We won't accept that. And so they brought Jamie back to life, and then everything's okay, and the kids know she's okay, and she's going to go off and teach school. That's good. No, you cannot put her over there, and let's not see her again, says the public. So something was going on, but we didn't get it until, I think, maybe about 8 episodes in, something like that. The instant response, the hugeness of the response, and the fact that the writers were able to start hearing me and start changing some of these things, we all felt like there's this big wave that we're starting to ride. And then, of course, the press was all over it, and they were saying, well, now, Ms. Wagner, as a feminist, you're, and I said, I'm a feminist? And they said, well, yeah. I said, well, yeah, I mean, I get that I am a woman, and I'm about equality, and I'm all of this kind of stuff, but today that word is being used very loosely, and I think I'd rather say, in this moment, I'm not doing this as a feminist, I'm doing this as a humanist. Because to me, this is about cultural shift across the board, males and females. This is about re-understanding, reconceptualizing myself as a culture in general. Because though I'm a woman, it's not because I'm a woman that I want this story written where this bad guy isn't just a bad guy. He's got his own agenda. He's got his own suffering in life. He's acting out like doing something like this. He's a human being. We need to see that. It doesn't excuse it. It doesn't let him off the hook. These are what I call feminine principles of understanding that, in my opinion, needed to rise up in men and in the culture that we're creating. So. The press was actually, through the press, was when we saw the kind of impact it was having because of the questions that were asked. So it took a little while. It wasn't, we'll do this. It may have crossed the lines, but not to the point never connected to where I couldn't even go to a little village in Mexico, where they have 2 televisions within a 50-mile radius there. I was making a movie right after Bionics. I made the movie called Gina, what's that movie?
Meg Laurel.
No, No, it was after, what?
Second win?
No, it was, oh, for heaven's sake. What was the movie in Mexico, in Oaxaca? I mean, not Oaxaca. No. Right after Bionics. It had, huh? High Risk. There you go. High Risk. Anybody see that? High Risk? Oh, it's fun. You gotta go see it. Fun movie. Wow. Actually, you were probably too young to see it. Or you gotta get in that. Oh, yeah. So we got down to Mexico, and we were shooting in this little village called Palenque, and there was, when we were driving to this little town, there was shacks, and they had either tin roofs with rocks holding the tin on, or they were thatched roofs. We got into the town, we drove in there, and I thought, oh, finally, I'm going to be able to go somewhere. And it doesn't matter what I look like when I go out, because nobody's going to be there with a camera, and it's just going to be great. And I got out of the car, and this kid was running by, he was all but naked, and he looks at me and goes, "La mujer biónica!" And I turned around and I said, "How could you possibly know that?" I was like, sorry. It so shocked me. And they had two televisions. One was in this hotel there in the lobby, and the other was in the, I think it was the mayor's house or something like that. And they had 2 or 3 shows on that showed there by this big and the Bionics one. And so that was right at the end of the series, 1980, right after the series. It was so clear that I mean, that was only 3 years, right? We only did the show for 3 years. So it was just, it was hard to, that was really hard to get in. And then, yeah.
3 episodes.
About 3. It's so hard to answer that. People always ask me, well, at least you gave me 3. What's your favorite episode? You know I love biofeedback. And I like that because it was an episode that I really wanted to do. I wanted to provide information about the people in India and Tibet and control the body systems. We integrated that into. I like the ending episode. I think I'm especially fond of it because there was just a lot of personal stuff in that. It was kind of expressing a lot of what we were going through, what I was going through, what we were going through as a company, the Bionic crew, the Bionic writers and producers. You know, we've been canceled from one network and for political reasons, and another network knew we were still high up, so they brought us in, and so there was all this politics that was getting in the way of our show, so to speak. And we were exhausted, and so a lot of what she was expressing was what many of us were going through on the show. So that was like personal, all of that. So many others, they're just so fun. They're so fun. So much different. I don't know. Let's take a look at that. Wasn't happy about wearing that showgirl costume. You know, and the funny part about that is that I had to like barter with Ken to get the biofeedback show done. So, and he'd been kept giving me this thing called Headbox in Las Vegas. I'm like, really? So, kind of, it was like a 3-for-1. And then they had this Bigfoot thing going on. And I was pissed because I didn't want him to be a robot. You know, Bigfoot, a robot. He's a real, isn't he? So, don't ruin that for the kids, but anyway, he turned out to be a robot or something. So I bartered and did